which will feature an interview with the late Dr. Betty Shabazz just after her husband Malcolm X had been assassinated in 1965. She was interviewed by the late Mal Good of ABC News. That compelling interview and more coming up after this. History has duly noted the basic facts of the assassination of one of the most important figures of his time, Malcolm X. The date, February 21st, 1965. The time, midday. Location, Upper Manhattan's Audubon Ballroom, in front of a large audience. A police official issued this information to reporters shortly after the assassination.
Apparently there were at least 8 or 10 shots fired, 7 of which hit Malcolm. He sustained 1 shot in the lower right chin, and the other 6 hit him in the chest and body.
Was he dead immediately?
No, he wasn't dead immediately, but expired very shortly thereafter.
But actually only one fully accredited reporter was in the audience when Malcolm was struck down. Gene Simpson.
I would say I heard at least 8 shots fired. First, about 3 rapidly, and that's clear because Malcolm, I understand, was hit about 3 times. And then afterwards, when they were trying to get out, I imagine they were trying to scare everybody out of their way. There were many, many gunshots fired. I'm with WMCA Radio, and I didn't go as a reporter. I went, since I'm interested in current events, on my day off. Everybody knew what had happened, and there was screaming and pandemonium. I hit the floor and started doing kind of dog crawl towards a rampart, because at all this time, the gunfire was still going on, you see. And I was in what would have been the range of the gunfire, and just like everybody else, the first impression was to hit the floor. So I did that and got behind a rampart, and as fast as I could, got to a phone and filed my story.
How many shots were fired, would you say offhand? Dozens, or?
I wouldn't say dozens. I would say I can accurately say at least 5 to 8.
5 to 8. How many people would you estimate were in the auditorium at the time?
I would estimate about 2,000.
And Malcolm had no opportunity to say anything to address the crowd other than the
The only words that he said were Shalom Aleichem and stay calm, stay cool. Those were his last words.
Malcolm had known his days were numbered. Some in the organization that had ousted him, the Nation of Islam, also known as the Black Muslims, felt that Malcolm was a traitor because he spoke out about the moral decay he said he saw in the organization.
The byline of Aubrey Barnett in the current issue of a national magazine says that the black Muslims are a fraud. What is your comment on this?
Well, Aubrey Barnett is a very intelligent person, and he has a fine academic background, and I think that the story in itself was very analytical, and it was objective, and it was true.
He also says that the black Muslim movement is just another little money-grabbing scheme feeding on Negro frustrations. Do you agree with this, too?
Well, if it is, and it is, and that's what it has deteriorated to, you still can't blame the Negro, and you can't blame the movement. You have to blame the society that let such frustrations develop until this is the result of it. I don't think any organization in itself can be condemned. The society and its shortcoming is what has produced an atmosphere that brings these organizations into existence.
He says there are probably less than 7,000 members now in the Muslim.
Well, it has fallen apart. No, thank you. It has fallen apart. And but what it has done in falling apart, many of those extremely militant and dissatisfied black Americans are now free to participate into the full swing of the struggle that's going on in this country, and I think it will be inclined to step up the tempo.
U.S. government agencies had Malcolm under heavy surveillance, even when he went overseas, where he narrowly escaped death by poisoning.
To address the first Congress of the Council of African Organizations, which was having its first Congress in London, and they were interested in knowing the rate of progress or lack of progress that the black man in America is making in his struggle for human dignity. So I was there and couldn't be here. And at moments, intervals during that time I was over there, I almost wasn't over there.
With all that Betty Shabazz was suffering, having witnessed her husband being killed, her 4 children were at her side at the time, she somehow gathered up the strength to do this interview. which we share with you now.
What was his attitude toward his family?
Well, contrary to popular belief, his attitude towards his family was a very warm one. And although my husband traveled a lot, we had a very close relationship in the sense that whenever he would go away, I could always expect a letter, if not every day, every other day. And I could always expect a phone call. And now I think the great emptiness is not so much that he's away right now, but that he's away and I'll never get another letter from him, or I won't hear from him again. And when my children began to, after he's gone for a period of time, they began to ask me different things about him. They draw pictures and write little notes to him, and they're piling up. And I guess when they really start asking about him, I don't really know exactly how to explain to him that he'll never return. And I think there's a great emptiness.
In the course of his lifetime and his career, did he ever discuss with you the aims of this new organization he founded last year, the Organization for Afro-American Unity?
Well, yes, in particular, one of the aims was internationalizing the problem of the Afro-American in this country. He felt that as long as in a few states we were begging for cups of coffee or things of this sort, that we would not receive rights all over. Just as the white man is able to go all over the face of the earth and receive the same dignity and respect in one country as he does in the other. The Afro-American or the African, wherever he goes, receive indignation and disrespect. And he felt by internationalizing the problem, by helping the Africans, and in turn the Africans helping us to get our rights, that a black man, an Afro-American or an African, could go all over the face of the earth and receive the same dignity, the same respect as any white man. And I think that this was one of the aims, was a very good aim.
Did he ever discuss with you the chance of death, the likelihood that he would be assassinated?
Yes, we discussed it many times, and I have witnessed on several occasions different attempts being made on his life. And I think the press and the police were very unfair in their attitude towards what he was saying. They seemed to make it look as if he was just talking. One paper came out with Malcolm X claims such and such, and I even heard one person on television saying that it was all in his mind, and well, everything that he said concerning this, people tried to make it look ridiculous, tried to make him look ridiculous. Well, it finally happened, and then what just happened?
You felt, too, that he eventually would be assassinated because of his cause and his beliefs?
Yes, I mean, he died for what he believed in. Mm-hmm. He believed with his whole heart, soul, and mind in the struggle of the Afro-Americans in this country.
What about his family? You have 4 children, and you're expecting a 5th one this fall.
I'm expecting a 5th.
You talk about his love for his family and all, but I understand, and I know this is a very personal thing, but I understand he didn't have any insurance, and how could people help?
Well, one of the things, when we were black Muslims, it was one thing that we were taught never to have insurance, you know. It was a racket and this sort of thing. And this coming Friday, we had made plans to take out insurance and see the lawyer for other business.
I understand he planned to drop a will, too, this coming Friday with his lawyer,
Yes.
Mr. Sutton.
Yes, this Friday.
Well, first I should say that the family is without funds altogether, there being no insurance on Malcolm's life, nor on his possessions. The children, there are 4 children, and Mrs. Shabazz, Malcolm's wife, is expecting a 5th child. So it was necessary to do something about establishing a fund for the future of them. And many persons who are supporters, persons who are not supporters, some persons who are admirers, and some persons who are just curious, and some persons who are just good-hearted and concerned about the welfare of children, have made offers of money in support of them in the future, of a home for them, of schooling for the youngsters, of caring for the wife. And as a result of this, a foundation is being established.
You're asking for contributions to in lieu of flowers at this time?
We're not soliciting as though we were out on the street asking for money, but we think it will come. It will come.
As Malcolm's attorney, are you acquainted with the names of those who might have been responsible for this deed?
I know that Malcolm made a statement to the police as to who he thought might attempt to kill him. As to knowing their names, I don't know their names, no.
Would you like to say a word or two, Mrs. Malcolm X, about the charges made by the press some time ago that he returned from Red China with a lot of money, trunkloads of money?
Oh, yes. They were wondering, you know, how he was supporting his family. And they were saying that every time he came into the country that he would, you know, bring bucket loads, literally speaking, bucket loads of money in, you know, from these from Red China and countries like that. It was ridiculous.
In another area of life, at one time, when he was a member of the Muslims, he seemed to have disrespect for the civil rights leaders, particularly Martin Luther King. And we noticed in recent months, since he organized the Afro-American Unity Organization, that he changed in his attitude toward Martin Luther King. Did he talk with you about that at all?
Yes, well, I think you'll find that his attitude changed tremendously after he left the Black Muslim movement and traveled abroad. He made 2 trips abroad. And the last one, he spent 5 months abroad, and it really broadened his scope, so to speak.
Well, they say travel broadens your scope, and as much traveling as I did during the past 5 weeks, I think I would be in bad shape if it didn't make my scope at least more broad than it was before I left. One of the things that I learned in the Muslim world, I didn't see any racism. I didn't see any conflict between the people over there because of the colors of their skin or the differences in color of skin. And in every country that I entered, there were Muslims who were black, brown, red, yellow, and white. And there was no racist attitude in any of them. Then when I was in Arabia, during the pilgrimage, I had many different occasions when I would be involved with persons who would be considered white in America, who would be called white. They had blue eyes, blonde hair, and white skin. Yet they themselves didn't act like American whites act toward non-whites. There was a bond, a mutual understanding. There was an attitude of brotherhood practiced at all times. I analyzed it, or I should say, at least I studied it, because here in America, our experience always was, it was almost impossible to find whites who didn't act white, especially around non-whites. So the conclusion that I reached was that these people who had accepted the religion of Islam, who had accepted the existence of one God, automatically the chain reaction effect that this has, they would also have to accept the fact that everybody belongs to one family, one human family. So by accepting the oneness of God and the oneness of the human family, I believe the tendency to look upon each other according to the differences in color automatically was eliminated. Since they didn't regard themselves as white per se, as the American white man does, they didn't act white. They acted like humans. They acted like they were part of the human family, and all others present were part of the human family. Now, this was the first experience, or the first time that I had ever experienced this. And as I wrote to some friends, if the religion of Islam could eliminate racism from among the societies that exist in Africa, Asia, Europe, and Arabia, then it would do well for the American white man to expose himself to get to a better understanding of the religion of Islam, and perhaps it can remove some of the racism, which is like a cancer that is destroying the American society today. And the only thing that ever gave me the impression that there was any hope of eliminating racism from the hearts and the minds and the attitude and behavior of the American white man was the fact that I had seen proof positive in the Muslim world that the religion of Islam had removed it from them.
He felt that although he disagreed with Dr. King's nonviolent principles, and he himself didn't believe in violence, but he believed in protective, self-protection. He thought children walking the street in order to get voting rights for their parents, he didn't think that was right. He thought the government, white people don't have to walk the street to get white children rather don't have to walk the street to get voting rights for their parents. I mean, the government guarantees it. The government backs it up. And this is what he felt, that Afro-Americans, white children, have to walk the street in danger to get voting rights for their parents. This is something that should be guaranteed according to the Constitution. I mean, if our sons can fight in wars protecting a land, then why should I send my little girls and little boys out to walk the street in danger just to get voting rights? This is something that the government guarantees, and this is something that he didn't criticize Dr. Martin Luther King for it necessarily, but he felt that he was at least trying to do something to correct a bad situation.
The white man doesn't realize that every day he's losing his ability to face facts. The situation that he's in South Vietnam is a good example, or in other parts of the world. His attitude toward Red China. All of these are indications of an overall characteristic that is coming down upon white America, the inability to face facts. And their inability to face facts where the black man in this country is concerned is probably more profound or more noticeable than any other aspect of the American problem.
Betty Shabazz told of her husband's recent visit to Selma, Alabama.
Well, he was rather distressed. The condition that the Afro-Americans lived in that part of the country. He wanted to go back down there, and he was invited by the Freedom Democratic Party to be in Mississippi next week by Ms. Fannie Lou Hamer and someone else that I can't recall at this point. But he had planned to go down. He was making preparations to go down.
She also talked about the kind of response and telegrams that she received after Malcolm had been assassinated.
Tremendous response. I didn't realize my husband was so well known and so well liked. I think one of the things is that, as I mentioned earlier about internationalizing the Afro-American problem, is that when he went to Africa, he got the moral support of the Africans, because being an Afro-American and his foreparents are from Africa, there were strong ties.
How was he received in the Asian countries, Mrs. Malcolm X?
He also received moral support in the Asian countries because he was a Muslim, and the majority of them are Muslim.
I see a certificate here, kind of an authorization. Did he tell you about this? Where did this come from?
Well, it was given to him from the Office of the Supreme Imam, from the rector of Al-Azhar.
I see it was just last October that he received it, and it has his name in
September.
September,
yes.
1964. It says to Mr. Malcolm X, with his true and correct faith as one of the Muslim community with their rights and obligations, and it is his duty to propagate Islam and offer every available assistance and facilities to those who wish conversion to Islam. This is a certificate to whom it may concern. This was kind of an authorization to propagate the Islam religion, was it?
Yes, yes. And he formerly was a black Muslim, and he had become an Orthodox Muslim. He had gone to Mecca twice, and he has the title of Hajj.
What about the telegrams? I see you have a couple of them here. I wonder if you would mind reading those for us, or read a portion of them?
I think it's a sample of some of the many telegrams that I have received all over the world. And I think it was wonderful. Oh, I read this. No words can express the profound grief that we share with you. Malcolm was more than a great man. He was an epic. The heart and soul of 22 million life for far beyond any number or geographic lines. His courage and leadership, his depth and perception are unequaled. May his great love for you and your children and your infinite love for him keep his spirit alive forever. And another one I particularly liked. We express our profound shock, sorrow, and indignation at the vile assassination of Brother Malcolm X. Brother Malcolm was a leader of his people and a hero of the revolutionary masses throughout the world. We reaffirm this tragic time at our increased determination to continue and intensify the struggle for the human rights of American 22 million slaves and all slaves throughout the world. The fight that Brother Malcolm led will not be stopped. It will double and redouble, and the memory of Malcolm will inspire the deeds that the name of Lumumba inspired in the African black hearts and minds. We join you and Brother Malcolm's bereaved wife and children in homage to a fallen warrior and in dedication to the task ahead.
Well, Mrs. Malcolm X, I know you hesitate to discuss this, but there's talk of your knowing the names of the assassins and whatnot. Do you feel any bitterness toward them at all?
Well, I think it's at a point like this, it's kind of hard and inhuman not to feel some type of emotional reaction towards such a thing. I mean, my husband was all I had. I mean, he was everything to me and my children. We never traveled together because couldn't find anyone to really stay and take care of the children. And
he said one time he really didn't trust anybody with the children but you, isn't that it?
Yes, he said he didn't trust anyone with the children but me, and that as long as I took care of his children and loved them, that he'd always love me and provide for us.